So today I want to focus on how to counter combo Druid. I see a lot of people talk about their frustrations at how often they lose to Druid. It's a fairly easy deck to pilot, at least at like a basic level. And they can snag a lot of free wins with a combo that does 14 or more damage. However, I really don't see enough people trying to counter the deck, and I don't know if it's just because a lack of knowledge of what actually does counter it, because it's very, very strong. But Druid, especially from my experience, is running rampant on ladder. So I wanted to throw a few options your way. So the general gist of it is that combo Druid has a tough time dealing with any sort of board that goes wide. So if there are a lot of kind of middle range minions, right? Mid-range minions, you're going to have trouble clearing them. You've got Swipe for dealing 1 damage to a bunch of stuff and 4 to a single target. Well, something like Zoo doesn't have a ton of 1 health minions, right? And even the stuff with 1 health, not all that valuable. You're going to be buffing stuff out of range. You're going to already get value from the battle cry. Other times, a keeper, it's going to deal 2 damage, take out some of these minions, but there are bigger, solid bodies and lots of ways to buff these things out of the range of any kind of AoE, or even that bit of single target swinginess that Druid has. So I think Zoo is in a weird place. A lot of people, I think, are reluctant to play it because it's a very frustrating deck to play against, right? You can lose a lot of games that you feel you should win. Either you draw very poorly or they draw very well. Maybe it doesn't seem like a skillful win, although there is actually a higher skill cap to this deck than I think a lot of people give it credit for. But it's a deck that goes wide with minions. It doesn't look quite the same as other mid-range lists. I'm sure you're familiar with this and all kinds of other variants. But yeah, like I said, you're looking at 2 or 3 health or more from most of your minions here. You don't really run out of draw power because of the Warlock's hero power, and it's very easy to spread a board wide. Even if late in the game they try to come back with like a big taunt, or maybe they are able to get Thalnos plus Swipe, with the spell power, clear a number of your minions, you can just re-flood the board and you'll do just fine. Zoo, highly, highly recommend it for anyone who's having trouble facing combo Druid. I know it's like an evil deck, but sometimes you have to be the bad guys to beat the badder guys, I guess. Another very strong list that I don't see a lot of is Midrange Shaman. Saw a lot of this from tournament decks, from our most recent tournaments. Does extremely well at, again, building this kind of sideways board. Even just the hero power, you're getting lots of these 2 health totems, hopefully not the 1/1, and you're able to take advantage of those with Flame Tongue, trade off into bigger minions, and just keep building that board wide. Stuff like Feral Spirit, very difficult to deal with. 2 minions that have 3 health, especially if you can buff it up with that, or sometimes just leave it as is. Argus, another tool that works great at buffing things across the board. And a list like this, because it's a little more high-end, you can fit in the Black Knight, which is just a straight counter, right, to any taunt. Pretty much any combo Druid is going to be running taunts, whether they choose to actually do a charge or taunt from Druid of the Claw is still dependent, but for the most part, they're going to taunt it up. They're going to need that extra health, and you're going to be able to counter it. There are a lot of different forms of combo Druid, right? Some are more on the token side, some have those bigger taunts. This is obviously going to get great value against those things that are running like Ancient of War, but still just a reasonably solid card. And honestly, you don't even really need it to win the matchup. It's just something that kind of boosts your win rate even more. Now, it is weak in other matchups, right? Zoo, I think, is very solid across the board for the most part. It doesn't have too many weak matchups. Shaman, mid-range Shaman here is weaker against Zoo, so it's tough if you're in this pocket of the meta where you're facing a lot of combo Druid and Zoo. Maybe it's not the best choice there, but I find when I'm in Legend, especially the higher I go up in Legend, the more Druid I see and the less Zoo that I see. Certainly fewer Zoo bots, so I think this list is a solid choice and a lot of fun to play too. Finally, Midrange Hunter. Now, this mid-range list is built to be a little more well-rounded. I've got 2 explosive traps in here, which is to consider something like Zoo or anything else that's going to go aggro, right? Build the board wide like a Shaman or something like aggro Paladin. You don't see a ton of that stuff. So I think if you are in a pocket of the meta where you're just not seeing a lot of that, that is maybe the first card I would consider cutting. You could cut an explosive trap, put in something like a Jungle Panther. You could even toss the Black Knight in here. If it is just all Druids that you're facing, I certainly wouldn't blame you. But again, goes for the same kind of plan. It's got some mid-range bodies, right? Animal Companion, River Croc, both are great if you can hit them with Houndmaster. That's again why I think Jungle Panther's kind of like a fringe card that you could fit in there. It's a great Houndmaster target, and once you get it to 4 health, very strong. Stranglethorn going to do a lot for you. Highmane is just, the true Hunter legendary. But as well with this Hunter, a couple inclusions that are there basically specifically to counter stuff like Druid. Deadly Shot and Freezing Trap. Single target, big taunts, an early Yeti, whatever it happens to be, Deadly Shot is going to get value against almost every single minion that your average combo Druid is going to be running. Freezing Trap, also amazing. Even if they're running low-end stuff like a Harvest Golem, if you pick it up with a Freezing Trap, a lot of the times that means that Harvest Golem is just out of the game. It's very rare they're going to want to play a 5-man Harvest Golem. And hell, if you can actually get a charge out of your bow with the Freezing Trap, it's just that much better. Hunter's Mark, I think, is pretty much just standard in basically every Hunter you're going to see. But no surprise that it will also do very well against big minions, right? Anything that you can shrink down. But the game plan is the same. This doesn't flood the board quite as much as the other 2 lists that I just showed you. A lot of times you'll be sitting at like 2 or 3 minions, but they're in that kind of awkward range to deal with. And later in the game, you're going to be doing things like maybe playing an Animal Companion or playing an Eagle Horn Bow, as well as a Hero Power or as well as another minion. So even though the curve is very, very low here, keep in mind a lot of these things, you're going to be playing 2 cards on the same turn. A Deadly Shot with an Animal Companion is huge to swing the board in your favor. And then you've got the ability to refill with something like Starving Buzzard, Unleash the Hounds, although hopefully they haven't got too many minions out there, so don't even be afraid to just double Starving Buzzard or Buzzard Croc, something like that. Maybe you pop your Highmane. But tracking as well, always worth a mention, is going to help you get those Freezing Traps when you need them, going to help you get those Deadly Shots in crucial moments, because sometimes, Innervate is a card. They could get out giant taunts very, very early. So tracking, going to be one of your best friends in the matchup. So yeah, those are 3 decks I think that do very, very well against Druid. Basically, combo Druid in any of its forms. If you're finding yourself frustrated, finding a lot of Druid on ladder, highly recommend any of these 3 lists. And if you want to go further than this, really just keep that thought process in mind. Mid-range decks, things that have kind of middling bodies and can build the board wide, going to do great against Druid out there.